Hi guys, welcome back to episode 2 of Lions Den. Today we're talking about the social script and truth. So why are we talking about this subject? It's because I'm sure every one of you in your 20s are figuring out what you should do with your career and your life. And most of the time we look at our peers and people in their 30s and 40s or some of our parents and see what the proper way to live is.
All right. So I have a question for you. What's your idea of a social script and how does that affect your decision making? Give me an example.
Right, I think my idea of the social script is um, what we're expected to do to live a successful life, basically. Um, I would think about like most people around me are in finance um, or in medicine or law or accounting because they can see where the life would be 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. So there's some comfort built into um, following the blueprint of living a successful life. Because if you are a contrarian, you do something completely different, then um, sometimes you could be quite lost because you don't know where you would be. And when you think about it, we're basically like toddlers. When a kid falls, it doesn't immediately cry. A kid looks at its parents' reaction before it starts crying. When the parents are worried, the kids will also feel worried and begin to cry because they know something's wrong, something's bad happening. Um, so subconsciously, even though we're given complete freedom to do whatever we want, we live whatever, however we want to, we will still naturally seek out society's approval to reflect if we're living correctly. So yeah, that's my idea of the social script, and um, I do think that is
Do
necessary.
you
And
feel like it's the same idea as a that what we call the comfort zone? Like you're always in your comfort zone and you feel more comfortable. Is that the same concept or is there like a subtle difference?
you're definitely in your comfort zone when you're following a social script because you're not standing out in any way, right? You're just following what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to live. And Stanley, I think you could relate when our parents tell us growing up that you can do anything you want. By that they mean you
Now
can.
you want to be astronauts and whatever you want to do, but now you're limiting yourself into these sort of categories, and you kind of yeah you what do you think? I think society is a very complex entity, and our interaction are kind of often guided by a social script because I feel like our social scripts are all kind of different, but we have like a foundation of what we stand on
Right.
to govern our behavior. And that's basically why I think there is a sense of order in our society. But like how far do you think we should go in terms of like exploring our free will, let's say, to not follow the social script?
I do understand that.
How far should we how far should we like deviate from the norm?
Yeah, I completely understand that. When your point is that when there's a social script that everyone's following, um, there's order in society, right? Because everyone is doing what they're supposed to do and there's order. I think the where people should deviate from the social script is um, when they're not really exploring what they're competent at and they're just doing what they're supposed to do. For example, like yourself, you have a wonderful eye for what art is, what beauty is, and not everyone has your talent. But imagine you forcing yourself to becoming a surgeon. You won't be the best surgeon in the world, right? Because your talent lies somewhere else. But a brain surgeon who wants to become an artist would not be a really successful artist because the brain surgeon isn't really gifted in appreciating art and beauty and creating art. So I think that if everyone were to
So I feel like
where they
by deviating from the social script, it's not going to give you a more financially stable life, let's say. it might give you a better life in terms of like it's gonna make your life more fruitful and you're gonna have a more fulfilling life, but not in terms of financial stability, right? So it's not gonna be, oh, if you're talent, if you're good at something and you have occupations that's related to it, you're gonna have a successful career. That's not a guarantee, I'd say.
It's not a
But in
guarantee,
the long run, I feel like yeah, it's not a guarantee.
but think about it. You're more likely to be successful at what you're gifted at. For example, a brain surgeon might be paid higher than, um, let's say, a clothing designer, um, but someone who's really gifted at designing and art and fashion won't really excel in terms of becoming a brain surgeon. Like, there's definitely someone who's really talented at doing surgery, and they're just gifted at doing that, right? So when you compete with someone who's better than you at doing a certain thing, then you're not really on the right playing field, right? You should enter a playing field where you can best display your talents, right? And if you imagine, let's say I get a brain cancer, I want to find the most talented brain surgeon I can. I don't just want to find a brain surgeon because he managed to become a brain surgeon because he just wanted to be rich. Like, he doesn't have much talent in
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I want my life, right?
It often stems from the uh, wanting to be rich. I feel like that's the initial start of why people want to do medicine. They want to do, be a doctor and all that. I feel like that's the initial drive that makes them want to be what they are now. And do you think that's part of the social script? And I have another question, which is, um, do you think having a kid, starting a family, is part of the social script? And if so, isn't financial stability a crucial part of, wanting to start a family? And I think that's necessary.
Yeah, Stanley, we have so much to unpack in your
Yeah.
questions. I think what it comes down to is our personal values, what we think living a good life is. Because for some people, a good life is a is one that we chase after wealth. Like Aristotle, he mentioned that most people chase after wealth, honor, or pleasure, because like pleasure is simple to understand, right? If we want to be happy, so people would chase after um, woman, just getting drunk, feasting, just enjoying what pleasure life has to offer. And wealth, it makes sense because um, we chase after wealth so that we have the purchasing power we have more options to do what we want to do. But when you look at pleasure and wealth, they're not ends in themselves, which means they're not desirable for their own selves, right? You want wealth, you want money because you can purchase something else. So they're not ends in themselves. And even honor, Aristotle mentioned in his Nicomachean Ethics that even honor, like in the past, people would fight, they would live and die for their country, for their religion, for their family name. All the things they did were very honorable. But then honor is not something that you can earn yourself. Honor is something that's bestowed by someone else. For example, if you serve the Catholic Church, the Pope would give you an honor, whatever. But it's not something that um, you can freely earn. So, what you mentioned about financial success or having a legacy, like having kids, is part of having a legacy. So these are all questions we have to ask, like what a good life is. It's different for every single person, but according to the social script, it would be financially successful and having a legacy. And having a legacy could be in the form of having kids or writing books or planting trees. Basically,
So it all comes down to personal beliefs. So
right. And
yeah,
I think why people like this idea of um, having financial success and having a legacy as a successful life is because um, if most humans are given the opportunity to be immortal, they would gladly choose that. And the closest things to being immortal is writing a book, because after you die, the book is still here. Having kids, because they are your genetic succession. even though you're gone, part of your
Immortal
gene.
as in immortal as in leaving a legacy behind, right?
Basically,
Not necessarily like physically immortal.
like that's the closest thing to immortality we get.
Immortality, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanna plug this book, John Berger's Way of Seeing. I think it explores the value and role of art in our society. And he's basically arguing that the way we see art is shaped by a social or cultural context. And I think he was trying to argue that it's a fundamental part of human experience instead of being a luxury and commodity. But art in our society is viewed as a luxury, and it's a very luxurious, a rich people sport, sort of. Like if you go to auction, people clap at people
Highest bid.
look at a piece of art. They look at a piece of art. They don't applaud or nothing. But once they heard the price of the art, they start going crazy because I mean, Picasso probably gonna sell for millions of dollars, and they only care about the price because we determine the value of art. But I think Jordan Peterson is also a believer of either visual art or any sort of art. Like you can say a poem is a piece of art. You can see a piece of literature, a piece of art. I think it it is, like, in my opinion, a fundamental part of our experience, and it has the power to challenge our assumptions and basically broaden our perspective. And that's one of the ways to break out of the social script. So, I
Like,
mean,
think that,
what do you think about that?
like I don't I think that art could be a way of breaking out of the social construct, social script, but also think that sometimes when you go to auction houses or when you go to art shows and you see some sort of art,
It seems like it's the the pinnacle of a social script,
but
because
sometimes when you look at some art, you're like, how is that art? Like I don't think we need to be educated in art um, for many years to understand what art is, because when we hear a beautiful piece of music, we know that that's good music. Or when we encounter a beautiful architecture that transcends us,
beautiful architecture.
we know that's a good architecture. So sometimes I believe that the snobs or certain art collectors or they
But
really
people like let's say interior design, for example. One can say the minimalistic interior design style is their favorite because it symbolizes a kind of, it is the type of environment they want to live in because there's not a lot of fuzz. They don't want a lot of distraction, and that's the life they want. And so it just comes down to what you believe, basically, and what you want in life. And
but
yeah,
don't you
what
think
do
that
you,
sometimes sometimes our tastes are dictated by society, like um let's say like you mentioned minimalism, right? Because I know like the Scandinavian minimalism has been really popular nowadays. Everyone's home interior
mm,
design seems to look the same, right?
Andy?
Uh,
Yeah, and Japandi is also a new wave. It's basically infusing the Japanese style, the Japanese wooden style with the Scandinavian style.
low contrast, low saturation,
Low
uh,
contrast, low saturation, exactly.
light colors, very easy on the
A bit of a dash of wabi sabi in there. That's
right.
basically what Japan is. Yeah.
Stanley, like why are we talking wabi sabi? Like, why don't you tell us what wabi sabi is? I
I don't
think
think wabi sabi is our topic for today. I feel like wabi sabi is worth a episode on its own.
just tease the
Yeah.
audience. Just mention it
The
briefly.
audience. Wabi sabi is, you basically see the beauty in imperfection,
Basically,
and it's related to Zen Buddhism, but we're gonna talk about it in the other episode. But I just want to add on the art and its role in society. So let's take a Rothko for example. If you know Rothko, Rothko is a artist from the 20th century, and he basically just draws like big pieces of like there are squares, like red squares in a huge canvas, and it's very abstract. Mm, but once you give it a meaning, I feel like it kind of makes sense after you kind of explains why the painting exists and why is it so popular, because of his the history behind it, and he kind of explains it himself, like what his art is about. Yeah, why am I going with this? I really don't know, but
I love where we're going. And we're just going with the flow, and wherever we end up, that
yeah,
destination. I want to ask.
because he committed suicide, and I think he was painting back then, and kind of just gives it a deeper meaning because all his drawings are of basically like a majority of his drawings are related to the color red. So the fact that he died while painting, it kind of symbolizes, red always appears in famous arts. Like Matisse has a piece of painting a painting that is called the Red Room, or I forgot the exact name for it, but there's an exhibition about the color red, because all the artists are very drawn to the color red. They always come back to the color red because it kind of symbolizes uh the life of a human being. So I think the fundamental of art actually lies within the art, but also I think the prices are part of the social script. So it's kind of hard to explain. It's kind of hard to explain. Like it can go both ways.
I have a quick question about art.
Okay.
Just now you mentioned, I forgot the name of the artist you mentioned who drew the different squares and red.
Rothko. Yeah.
Right. Do you think people can perceive what the art is trying to portray, or do you think they only understand the meaning of the art because of how he expressed it? Because in my opinion, like sometimes um, a good piece of art could portray what it's trying to tell you without having words under
Yeah,
the.
the little explanation next to
Right, 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 right.
the little piece of paper that I feel like oftentimes it ruins your what do you call it, like the initial impression of a piece of art for sure. So I don't really look at the description of the art first. I look at the art directly, and I kind of have a general understanding of what the art is about in my head without any backstories or any descriptions of why the art exists. I think Rothko mentioned the best way to look at his art is actually from um, you have to stand directly in front of the art, and I think 8 inches apart, so you get the full experience of what a Rothko painting is. So you basically just immerse yourself in a red room, a piece of red canvas, and you just take in all the human experience of being in basically his presence and the environment he wants to portray.
Do you think that
And yeah,
do you think that our taste in art is innate? Like it can is it can we naturally perceive what good art is, or do our tastes are basically dictated by society or a certain class of people or certain art critics or snobs? Do you think
I
our perception
think
of beauty is innate?
um I don't think so. I don't think there's a definite answer to that, because our taste is definitely dictated by um a collective consciousness, let's say, because society, I mean, human society has been progressing for thousands of years, and there's definitely a component of a human experience that is dictated by the society instead of just very like very innate. There's definitely a small part, even a small part, like it still determines our perception of art for sure.
But in this
What
world,
what do you think about that?
I certainly think that every person has a capability, innate capability of dictating what good art is. But oftentimes we basically switch off our judgment and we just import the taste and values of society to help us judge what good art is. So we basically switch off our innate talent and our innate perception, and we basically just immediately wear the lens of society's perception of what good art is. Um, yeah,
What
that's
about music? What do you think about music? Because I know you're a sax player. You also play the piano. Like, what do you think about music? For me at least, I feel like the more you listen to music, you kind of you can hear the little details in between the lines a little bit, and I think it actually makes a difference. Like, what distinguish a good piece of music from another piece of music?
it's this super hard to put into words. I think it's very intuitive. Sometimes when you listen to it, you know it right away. And
So it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Like, I don't think there's a piece of perfect um art or music, let's say.
right, yeah.
So it just comes down to your personal belief. So I mean, our podcast is about being in our 20s. So how does that ties back to you know our topic, which is the confusion you have when you're in your 20s?
I think it's very clear, like from mentioning your taste in art or uh, your your preference for interior design or music, we have our own innate preferences. So there's no one good style of art or no one good style of music or one good style of interior design. We all have our own tastes and preferences. But when we're faced with our career choices and um, the type of life we want to lead, we oftentimes just switch off our internal judgment. We immediately adopt the values and tastes of others. That's basically like saying that I don't know what I want for my room design. I'll just decide what's the most fashionable at that current moment, like what's the most acceptable and what's the most um, generally liked.
Yeah, I would say the social script is presented to us as order, and the opposite of order is chaos. So from deviating from order, you're basically approaching chaos. But it doesn't mean chaos is a bad thing, right? Because if you look at the yin and yang, there's chaos. The small dots, like there's a white dot and a black.
And the blue teardrop, and there's a black
Yeah,
dot.
exactly.
So you mentioned Jordan Peterson a lot of times, and Jordan Peterson said, when life is in balance, you have one foot in order and one foot in chaos. And I certainly feel that when, let's say, when I'm traveling, um, there's all basically it's all chaotic because the bed is new, all the experiences are new, the food, the scent, everything is new, and I could travel for a bit, but I can't travel forever. I miss my routine. I miss my schedule. I miss my own bed. I need that order. But when you are stuck in a routine for too long and seeing the same people, the same places every day, you need some chaos. So there's always a balance between chaos and order. And I could imagine being stuck in a 9 to 5 job, just doing the same paperwork day to day. You need more chaos in your life. So I think the social script is really good in terms of providing order, but we each need to inject some chaos in our lives, whether that's adopting new hobbies or just switching up our routines.
Yeah. One thing I want to mention about art is I want to specify when I was talking about art, I was talking about art in modern society. So from I forgot the exact it's probably like from 1850-ish onwards, and people are experimenting with art. Before that, it's more like a rich people thing, right? It's a very old money. It's not really like nouveau riche. It's very um and what do you want to call it, like anarchist?
I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's like it's for wealthier people basically. So, but after that, art becomes this thing that is very progressive, and I mean, you can say it's chaos, but it also brings order to our society too.
Really, how do
Um,
you think?
I'm trying to think for an example. I'll get back to that, but go ahead. What are you gonna say?
Let's let's circle back to um, why are we talking about the subject on the social script and truth. I think it's because we're all quite uncertain what we want to do, and um, we're quite tempted in terms of following certain blueprints that are already laid out for us. But I'm quite worried, and I'm sure most of you or some of you are, that you set out to achieve what you think you want to achieve, but then when you enter your 40s and 50s, you realize that you've lived a sort of inauthentic life all along. You haven't been living according to your own truth. So Arthur Schopenhauer said, "A man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants." So how I see that quote is that we can achieve what we set out for, but after we have achieved it, realize that what we wanted all along uh, wasn't what we really wanted. And I would rather experience a quarter life crisis right now, figure out what I want, rather than just being stuck with a social script, having the comfort of the blueprint, and then having a bit make midlife crisis when I'm in my 40s or 50s, and realize that when I actually want to do what I want to do, I already don't have the strength, energy, youth, and time to do them. And recently, for my class called Life and Death, we had to read The Death of Ivan Ilyich by Tolstoy. So Ivan Ilyich, in the story, he's a Russian um, bureaucrat who studied law. He's from the upper middle class, and his whole life he has been fixated on what propriety is. Like he lived a good life according to the social script. So um, he had a good family, wife, kids, lived in the right place of town, dressed the right clothes. The interior design was a certain way. So he lived correctly, right? And one day when he got injured and he's basically dying in a few days, I think that was when he turned like 45 or something. He realized his entire life has been inauthentic. Like he hasn't been living correctly. So it circles back to our previous episode on memento mori, how important meditating on our own death is for us to live authentically. Because when we remember that we're gonna die someday, then
It's like if, and sorry for interrupting, but I just um it's like if a doctor tells you, oh, you only have 3 years to live, you're gonna live in chaos. You're gonna want to experience everything. It's not necessarily like out of order, but you're gonna do things that's out of your comfort zone. You're gonna deviate a lot from the social script if you only have a limited amount of time. It's because we don't know when we're gonna die and we don't think about it.
We
That's
could
why we
die tomorrow.
always live in these orders, right?
We could die anytime. We could die tomorrow. We could die like in half an hour.
Exactly.
Who knows? So like keeping death in mind really helps us living our true self and living authentically and and also interesting thing about dressing, right? I see a lot of people buy nice clothes, but they always store them in a closet and telling themselves, "Oh, when I can attend this big event in like a year or two, or maybe some major milestone, I'll wear that dress or wear that suit." But then who knows? One day you might get cancer or heart attack or something. You might die before you realize, and you never wore that dress or suit. So, so in my mind,
Yeah,
there's
that's why I always think. Yeah, that's why I always think Yeltsin's overdressed.
uh, so
Yeah, because practicing memento mori
in my
for
mind,
sure, for sure.
you should always dress like every day is a gift, right? When people ask you, "Oh, why are you all dressed up?" Because tell them that it's a Monday, it's a Tuesday, or because I want to. Because why put your clothes away when you don't know when you're gonna die? You have to treat every day as your last day and treat it as your best day. This is a slight tangent, but I remember one day I was tasting wine with my friend and I asked him, "What's the favorite wine you've tasted?" He said, "The glass of wine I'm holding right now." What he's saying is, isn't that this one is actually the best one he has tasted, but our attitude is to have the attitude to appreciate what's in front of us, whether that's your life today or um, your career choices or whatever. You need to have that appreciation of the present um, and also it's a completely off tangent, but let's circle
Yeah,
back to the episode and conclude it. So Stanley, run us
yeah.
through like what we talked about.
I just want to add on. I was gonna talk about bringing order to like ours bring order to society, right? I was gonna So I don't remember the exact quote for it, but I remember it's from the book, this book. Um, I think it's the way we see things is affected by what we know and what we believe. And that statement is basically basically saying art is a product of the collective consciousness. So I think that is the fundamental component of a social script. You know, I think social script is order. So I think art really I think art creates a sense of order in terms of what do you call it? What do you think? Wait, I
So you think that art helps create a sense of order in terms of you mean order in terms of
I think it's a very complex topic.
I
It's like the yin
I don't
yang
know.
symbol.
I have an idea, but I don't know if that is what you're thinking about. My idea of art creating order is culture. So basically, art is a product of culture, and
Right, right, right. If you put it, yeah,
also
exactly.
culture culture is basically just the way a group of human beings in one corner of the world found the best way to survive as a group. What I mean by that, like for example, like Confucian values of taking care of your elders and respecting your elders. Um, the whole Confucianism system ensured people in the Far East their survival and prosperity. So
Yeah.
art
Uh,
is part of culture, and culture is basically um, the best way that a group of people in a certain period of time in a certain geographic area ensure their survival.
Yeah, exactly. I recently read it somewhere, the first mural painting. In the caves, there's like a lot of mural paintings of cows and all these animals. It's like basically a painting of what they are living at the time. So their living situation at the time. And they recently found that it's actually related to agriculture.
Really?
So yeah, so there's lines on the paintings that symbolizes um I think the quarters of harvest and rains and weather. So they're basically the first mural painting is about having an order in society and having to feed the family and having to calculate a more efficient harvest. So I think that's exactly the way of how art brings
Work.
order to our society. Yeah.
So we started off saying that social script is a burden, but then I think we circle back, and then now we're proposing that social script is not that bad after all. Like it ensured our
No,
survival.
I think it goes both ways. Like you have to create art, you have to create chaos and order and chaos. And I think that's the best way to live. We have to create some sort of social script. We all stand on some sort of foundation of social script so we can have a more of stable society.
So
But a little deviation is not gonna hurt anyone, you know?
right. Ultimately, it's your own life. You should dictate how you live it. I think that's the end of the episode. We're excited for you to join us, and we invite all of you to join our next episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you.